Good evening and welcome to the program. This is the Limelight. My name is Prince Apollo, and we talk social protection, social security. Well, social protection is an important component to mitigate the risks of vulnerability in communities, and Uganda as a country has moved a step in putting together policies and programs that target the vulnerable communities and people, looking at programs that target the elderly through social and support programs, including programs targeting the people with disabilities, the children, the youth, and others. But again, there are several setbacks we have witnessed of late, including budget cuts that threaten these, the implementation of these programs. And in this particular financial year coming, the budget for social protection has been slashed by more than 20 billion, and that seems to be a concern which we are trying to address this evening. And I've been joined by Patrick Katabazi Chichoncho, and he is the coordinator for the Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection. Patrick, I'm pleased to be with you this evening. Let's straight away go to our topic for discussion this evening. How true is that? It must come from you.
Yes, good evening, Apollo, and thank you for hosting me on this show and on this very important subject of social protection. When we talk about social protection, we are talking about private and public interventions aimed at eliminating vulnerability in our people, but then also ensuring sustainable and reliable incomes, but also building resilience and hedging our people against fangs of poverty. So this is a very, very broad concept that we may not be able to exhaust, but maybe to touch here and there on some of the programs that Uganda is implementing under social protection. And as you have indicated, we have a program called SAGE, the Social Assistance Grants for Empowerment. And under this program, we also have a sub-program there called Senior Citizens Grant, where money is provided to older persons to assist them to be able to live by. But then we also have programs for persons with disabilities, and we also have programs for children. For viewers' information, we have a NutriCash program that is being implemented by government of Uganda, development partners such as World Food Program, the Swedish government, and UNICEF in the 8 districts of West Nile. That is piloting a program to demonstrate how important it is to build the capacity of women, but also to improve the nutrition outcomes at a household level, and how that translates into the well-being of a child. Because Uganda has one of the highest rates of stuntedness, and more than 20% of our children are stunted. And that means that these are people who are likely not to be productive in their old age. And again, that undermines our growth potential, because it largely affects the human capital stock of the country. When you have people who cannot able compete in the labor market, people cannot be able to fend for themselves because of the challenges that they've had when they were very young. And we also have many other programs that are looking at building capacity and empowering our communities. Of course, in the budget, you had programs like GLOW. You have programs for youth, youth level programs, and many others. Of course, there are those who are also saying that programs such as Parish Development Model are also social protection programs. But here now we are talking about clear-cut, direct social protection programs. And There are some people in Uganda who think this is a relatively new concept. It is certainly not. When you read the International Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, all these matters were highlighted. And many countries have gone a step ahead on matters of social protection. You find countries like South Africa investing about 7% of their GDP
into social protection.
And of course, leading the pack from behind, you have Uganda, which is currently investing 0.7%.
0.7%
on social protection. So that means that if our GDP is about 50 billion US dollars, you have very, 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 very small, very, very, very small margin. And in fact, of course, of 0.7% of that. And of course, we also have our national budget again, which we can use as a yardstick. Social protection programs in Uganda, as read by the Minister of Finance in the budget speech, they account for no less than 350 million. And when you put it to scale to the budget of 72 trillion, you're talking about no more than 0.5% of our national budget. So that tells you, in terms of context, the story of budget allocation towards social protection, and perhaps we as a country, how we think about social protection.
That's what I wanted to ask you, Patrick. What does that tell in terms of being committed to promoting social protection in this country?
So we have various forms of social protection. We have various schemes as a result. So you have those which are contributory and those that are financed by taxpayers. So those which are contributory, we have a case, for example, of National Social Security Fund, where when you're employed, you contribute 5% and the employer contributes for you 10%. When you hit a qualifying mark, it could be age or state of affairs regarding your health.
You are eligible to...
then you'll be able to get this money. But then you have civil servants who get pension when they retire. That's a form of social protection. And the difference between the NSS and the public services at the current stage is that now this is purely financed by taxpayers to get the civil servants and cushion them against vulnerabilities that come with life outside employment. When you come to private sector, you have NSSF. But again, there are people who fall outside the scope of NSSF and the scope of
who do not
service,
save,
who for historical reasons were not able to be caught by the safety nets or by the net of social protection at a very early age, either because of the choice of employment or because of the nature of the circumstances. And these are older persons, for example, in Uganda circumstances. And government brought a program, Senior Citizens Grant for Empowerment, and ultimately 25,000 per month is given to older persons on a monthly basis, of course, to be able to help them to live by. And when we are talking about commitment and seriousness, this is a program that is targeting older persons who are 80 years and above. But government commitment, and through parliamentary resolutions in 2015, had given hope to Ugandans that this program would be, age of eligibility would be revised regularly.
To accommodate many more
accommodate many
elderly
more,
people.
but also progressively reduce the age up to 65 to be able to cater for all the older persons, and that has not happened. So we are still stuck at 80 years. And at 80 years, you are talking about 350,000 older persons who are 80 years. Now, you have a budget of 121 billion. Now, in the next financial year, this budget has been cut and is 100 billion. It therefore means that this money being more or less like a wage or recurrent expenditure, so to speak, if money is not enough, our estimation points to about 100,000 older persons going to be missing their payments.
Really?
And if you want to put it in terms of months, you are going to have older persons receiving only 9 months and missing. If we are to say we are going to pay
all of them.
pay all of them. So you'll still have older persons missing for 3 months, which money definitely will be equivalent to 20 billion, the same that is missing in the budget allocation. Of course, you know there are people who are extremely vulnerable, not because of their own making, because of circumstances surrounding them. And that's the case of persons with disabilities. You can be born when you are disabled, but also you can be disabled because of environment, because of accidents, and other unfortunate happenings. And a disability, as the word sounds, makes it extremely difficult to perform at your optimal level.
Yep.
Or to actually do work.
To exploit the opportunities around you.
Yes, around you, and the potential that your colleagues who are not will have. And that calls for additional support because, first of all, you're coming from a point of being disadvantaged, but then also you are also key participants in the economy, in the production cycle, which then calls for you not to be left behind, because if you left behind, then you don't become part of the entire economic ecosystem. And as such, government designed a program to have older persons with disabilities access funds through groups in various districts, in all the districts of Uganda. And this, of course, through various negotiations, the budget has been at 15 billion, and only 8.1 billion in the next financial budget is tenable. There was also a call from older persons, and the older person says, you know, government, you have taken so long to reduce the age of eligibility to 65. In the meantime, what happens to older persons who are very strong and energetic, who would want to participate in production? And then the government put up a program of SEGOP, which provides resources for access for older persons who would want to invest. And its budget is 5 billion, and that has been allocated in the budget, but I would imagine they would need much more. Because then we have more than 2 million older persons, in my view, even before we take into account numbers from census, who are more than 2 million. And in which case then, money of that magnitude is a drop in the ocean. And we think, I have said this, and I can always repeat it, that it so happens in Uganda that vulnerable persons in Uganda become part of the budget, and their budget ends up being vulnerable. And that's really very, very, very sad, that our people and our leaders do not look out for the vulnerable.
So in simple terms, Patrick, you're saying the commitment to supporting and promoting social protection is dismal.
Yes, it is.
According to the actions and
yes, and the money that is allocated.
And the money,
but then it has a historical context that our budgets are political. It's both economic and political tool.
That's what I wanted to ask you. What was the reason advanced for slashing this budget for an important sector like social protection?
Yes, of course, there have been a lot of confusion at Parliament, as you know, and the budget committee usurping the powers of executive and doing allocations and misallocations, something the president has complained, and what Minister of Finance has been on record complaining about. But also think that there is not adequate political will to support social protection programs. We know we have come a long way. Political will has been built by elaborate strategies employed by the Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection and other people of goodwill who think that social protection is the magic bullet of eliminating poverty and vulnerability in our midst.
Okay. And
we have seen a lot of progress, of course, from lack of counterpart funding initially, which was demanded when the donors were fully financing the project, to 100% financing from the 15 districts of Uganda to every district now in Uganda. So there's a lot of progress that has been registered.
But eventually budgets are being cut.
But it's still a drop in the ocean, and a lot of work needs to be done. And then political will needs to be further enhanced for people to understand that you can have a beautiful road and a beautiful hospital and a beautiful infrastructure. But once the quality of life of your people is down, then these people cannot ably utilize that physical infrastructure that you fight to put money on.
Now that the budget was read and of course we are entering a new financial year, what is there still any hope for this budget to be reinstated anyway?
Yes, there's hope that budgets of this nature can be
And how?
reinstated. But like I have said, you still come from the vulnerable position, that you're dealing with people extremely vulnerable and those who may not have a voice. I know the older persons, for example, now, youth, women have members of parliament. But the question of the day is that where were they when all these things were happening? So you still have people who come and start following the other interests, you know. But we know for sure that there are many avenues in the budget that can be exploited to restore these budgets. And one of the avenues, of course, is the supplementary budget that can be raised as soon as possible, as soon as the financial year starts, so that this money becomes available and makes all these programs predictable. Because if they are not, then it throws the implementation of these programs into jeopardy, and that's certainly not good, especially for the older persons, especially for the people who are vulnerable, the people that we must work very hard to protect.
So it is now upon the Ministry for Gender, Labour and Social Development to push for a supplementary budget to fill this gap.
Yes, the ministry needs to come up very fast, flag these anomalies to the Ministry of Finance very fast, and also start initiating processes that will lead to attracting financing to cross this gap. And of course, these are modest allocations, because generally the budget ordinarily would have been 142 billion. And of course, then going downwards, would be talking about 400 billion if we were to consider all persons who are 65 years and above, just like the original design of the program was. And then in my view, that definitely would solve so many problems.
How much would we need to do that?
We need about 400.
400
Yes,
billion.
we use up 400 billion.
In the whole national budget.
In the whole national budget. But still, that certainly would not even be 1% of the national budget. That is still would be very little.
So with less than 1% of the whole national budget, annual budget, we can cater for at least that support funding for 65 years and above.
Yes, and above.
Wow.
That's what my calculations are telling me. And for me, that would be a very, very important milestone. Why do I say so? Programs such as SAGE, in my view, would, for a serious country, would be a stop-gap measure. That you have people who are extremely vulnerable, who you did not plan for very well. In the meantime, caution them against risks and vulnerabilities, but then backwards, build a system that will prevent this kind of future vulnerability. And that will be in pension reform, skilling of the younger generation, orienting them to employment and to work, but also when they do so, create a mechanism for them to make contribution for their future social security. Do things such as reform of public service, reform of NSSF, so that even at the NSSF arrangement level, if you click 55 years, which is the lowest qualifying age, or 60, when you get your money, you possibly can get some, but the rest can be translated into various products. They could be health products in there, but also more importantly, small but regular income spread over 15 years, just like any other form of pension. Because what is happening here, you're talking about NSSF being a social protection, a social security program. But I mean, when you qualify to get 50 years, they give you your 100, 200 million, which you can easily blow up in 2 months, and then you become vulnerable.
You slide again into poverty and vulnerability.
Yes. Yet you could get a bit of it and then spread the rest to the many years under the actuarians will come up with numbers, and then be able to have some regular income that comes all the time that then can help you.
So as we conclude in simple terms, if without a supplementary budget, you said the elderly who have been receiving 25,000 every month throughout the year will only get that money for only 9 months.
Yes.
That's so sad.
Yes, it is. Yes, but the budget is implemented in many ways. So you can implement the budget the way it is, in which case people will be excluded. But then you can do a supplementary budget, an additional budget, so to speak. And government, and our law, our constitution, and the Public Finance Management Act allows government to spend 3% of the approved budget, even without prior parliamentary approval. And I think this money would qualify in that aspect. But also government, if then the minister and the permanent secretary are telling us that there were distortion in the budget, executive can now, by executive function or action, collect these distortions and possibly do virements.
Without supplementary.
Virement is where you get money from one activity to the other, or from one vote.
Or to another vote.
Yes, from one vote to the other vote.
Oh.
So that you correct
the anomaly.
No, normally. But of course, if that is if it is that one is about 10%, then you'll have to take it 10% of the budget for a vote. Then that's when you'll take it back.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
And that might create also other complications.
Thank you so much for your time. And
the pleasure is mine. And
we can only hope that this is corrected, and corrected very soon.
It should be, and that is my prayer too. And thank you, Salt TV, and you for lending a voice to people who are very vulnerable, and we are very thankful.
Thank you so much, our viewers. Now we wait to see what can be done, if a supplementary can be quickly put out, and we have the funds available. The elderly need this money, and they indeed need it. My name is Prince Apollo. Let's catch up next Friday in another edition.